Derek Bodner from Philly Mag will tell us how the lottery works, the Sixers odds, why this is so big for this franchise moving forward, and we'll take a look at the guy who will be running the draft for the 76ers. He has a great piece over at Philly Mag and a very in-depth look at Bryan Colangelo, what he does well, what his weaknesses are, and should we be concerned with the man with all the assets in his lap, Derek. We'll start off, though. The Sixers sent out a press release this morning. They will be the first team to, they are the first team that has sold advertising on their jersey. I know this is inevitable. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Your thoughts on the NBA allowing this, this little 3-year trial period?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's mostly inevitable. It doesn't bother me too much as is. I actually think the patches are pretty well done. I don't think they're too obtrusive. The problem you always have with these is the precedent that it's setting, what it's going to look like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. Is it just going to be too much? But by and large, you look at, the leagues over in Europe, you look at MLS, you look at other leagues that have done this, and it just doesn't really impact fan behavior all that much. You're not really going to lose fans as up in arms as people might be right now. So I don't think it's a major problem. But, I mean, in an ideal world, would I say no jerseys on ads? Absolutely. But to me, it was always just going to be inevitable.
Yeah, I guess so. My whole, one thing was I don't think there was enough skin in the game. I mean, for $5 million split by the team and the $2.5 million, to me, why would you do that to your product for $2.5 million? It just doesn't seem like there's enough skin in the game to do that to yourselves.
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, I think years down the line, it's going to be a much bigger slice of the pie. I do think they're worried about, people just don't watch live basketball all that much anymore, or not as much as they used to, live anything really. So I think they're looking for alternate ways and maybe supplement lost TV revenue in the future because they're just not making as much off of advertisement. And I think this is kind of like a trial period. I do think I think all things considered, it's probably going to be here long term, but I do think it's a trial period just to see whether or not advertisers can really benefit from it and then whether or not they can get more money from it, 3 years when all of these deals expire.
Derek Bodner, Philadelphia Magazine, PhillyMag.com, looks at the Sixers. Derek, tomorrow night's a very important draft, or lottery, I should say, and it's really frustrating because in other sports, if you're bad, you're slotted to a spot. In basketball, if you're bad, that doesn't guarantee you anything other than maybe a top 4 pick for the 76ers. Why, number one, can you give us the odds here? Because it's interesting to me that the odds for the Sixers to get the 4th pick are actually the best, right? Isn't that their best chance to have the 4th pick? Yeah. Percentage-wise, anyway.
The most likely outcome of all the things of where the 2 picks land, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 2 and 4, all those. The most likely scenario, which is a 21.8% chance of happening, is that the Sixers get the 4th pick in the draft and the Lakers pick doesn't convey. So yeah, while all other sports you have that certainty going in at the end of the season, outside of hockey where I think the top 2 picks are lottery. In the NBA, you very much don't. And the Sixers' most likely place is 4th overall, and the most likely outcome between the 2 picks is the 4th pick and no Lakers pick. So there's a lot at stake tomorrow for sure.
What are their other odds, 1st, 2nd, 3rd? Because obviously a lot of people think if you're not in the top 2 that this was another failed year for the 76ers if they don't get one of those top 2.
Well, I mean, when you factor in the Kings pick swap, they basically have a 26.9% chance at the number 1 pick, which is, in the NBA's environment, pretty strong. In fact, I think it's probably the best in lottery history among the current system. And then a 49.5% chance of the top 2 pick and a 67.7% chance of the top 3 pick. That, like you said, that difference between 2nd and 3rd, though, is quite big in the eyes of most. So you're really looking at basically a coin flip chance of walking away happy tomorrow.
So that's a little bit of the odds. Give us a little background on how the lottery works for the people who are still not really sure about this, because it used to be at halftime during one of the games. Now they've kind of made it more into a show. Yeah,
well, I mean the general procedure is still the same. There's basically a representative from every team, some select media members, and Ernst & Young, the accounting firm, that goes in a private room. There's a lottery machine with 1,000 ping pong balls, or 1,000 ping pong ball combinations, I should say, and they draw 4 ping pong balls. And come up with, a number 1 to 1,000, and all those numbers have been mapped to teams. The Sixers have 250 combinations of those to themselves, and then they get, an extra, 19 from the Kings. And then you have the people out front that are on live TV, and they're a separate group of representatives from the teams who do not know the outcome, do not know what's happening in that room, and they bring an envelope out with the results of each pick, and they read it out loud to, everyone's surprise. I mean, a lot of people will question why it's in the, back room, not in public. I do think a lot of people are going to run to it being fixed, and that's been a common complaint. When you have a business like Ernst & Young putting their name behind it, I would find that very surprising. But, I mean, that's the way they do it.
Yeah, and it would be really a horrible look for the NBA if the Lakers got 1 and the Celtics got 2 historic franchises with the Magic Bird trying to recreate a rivalry between those two. I think that would be a horrible look for the NBA on a night like this. Why is this lottery, is it the most important lottery? The other two have not worked out, so why is this one the most important one for the 76ers, Derek?
Well, I would kind of say that last year's with Karl Anthony Towns was the most important. Getting him, I think, was he was probably the best healthy prospect available during the Sixers' 3-year tanking period. So I think that was probably the most important. But I think this one was right up there because of the drop-off after 2, and also just because of how long this has been going on and just not getting that luck. Like, you need that one stroke of luck, and this is a chance to get it. Falling to 3 would be a big blow. I do like Dragan Bender, the Croatian power forward playing in Israel, but he's not going to step right in and change a franchise. He's going to take a little bit of time, and I don't think anyone really wants to wait for that. So it's huge. It's important because of how long and this has gone on, how little certainty the Sixers have, and it's important because of how steep of a drop-off there is, no doubt.
Derek Bodner, PhillyMag.com, covers the Sixers. Derek, you did a in-depth piece on Colangelo, his strengths, his weaknesses, and concerns you might have going forward after doing this piece. Give us an overview of the new Sixers GM and president of basketball operations and the feeling you have with him being their new decision-maker.
Yeah, well, I think it's really difficult, honestly, because you look at what he did in Phoenix, which I think was almost universally positive. And they hit on a lot of draft picks from Steve Nash to Sean Marion to Amari Stoudemire to just a whole bunch of really good selections. They played at an up-tempo pace. They really emphasized the 3-ball and really changed the way. They were very forward-looking in how they went about it. He obviously made a great hire in Mike D'Antoni, and they benefited from all of that. Made a couple of great signings. The Steve Nash signing, bringing him back from Dallas, was a great move. Just really everything they did it worked out. But then he got to Toronto, and he walked into a really enviable situation where he inherited a 21-year-old Chris Bosh, a max cap space, the number 1 pick in the draft, the runner-up to Rookie of the Year. And you look 3 years later, and they had built the worst defense in the league around that, like about a 35-win team. And Chris Bosh was frustrated to the point where he was, about to force his way out when he became an unrestricted free agent. So you kind of juxtapose those two situations, and everything that worked well in Phoenix, they just weren't able to build that identity in Toronto. The chance they really had to get that second star, that number 1 overall pick, they had LaMarcus Aldridge sitting there. They went on Andrea Bargnani instead, and they just weren't able to build around a very enviable piece in Chris Bosh. So there's good and bad. Certainly, I think his draft record has been pretty strong throughout his career, and that's kind of what you look forward to. But, not being able to find those complementary pieces, not being able to go out there and make the free agent.
We just lost Derek. He just vanished in the middle of thin air. You still there, Derek? Nope, he's gone. Just like that. Boom, he went out. Good stuff on this piece, by the way. Read the full article, and it's got to be about 3,000 words, I would assume, over at Philly Mag. We got Derek back, and all right, Derek, go ahead. We just lost. You just vanished right out of thin air there.
Sorry about that. But basically, you look at the two different spots and how they struggled to really build around Bosh in Toronto and make the trades and the free agent signings to build around him. And there's certainly a fair criticism and a fair concern, I think. He did say that somewhat with drafting DeRozan and Valanciunas and making the Kyle Lowry trade in Toronto, certainly key pieces to what's now an Eastern Conference Finals team. But the way they got there, they're really only in that position because they failed to build around Chris Bosh. It's certainly, I mean, there's great success, and there's a lot of question marks too, which I think is probably pretty typical of a GM who's been in the league for a long time.
All right, I've got short on time. I want to get a couple quick hits from you here, Derek. Number one, gut feeling on Saric.
I think he comes over. I think he's probably a bench player, 25 minutes per game next year.
Embiid, will he play opening night?
Yes. Mostly because I have to have something to believe in.
I did see some video today. Were you there of him dunking? That's the first I've seen of that.
I was not there. I think that might be the first dunk since the famous between the legs dunk right before he got injured last year.
I'll say, and I only say that's worth noting because when I last saw him in person, which was when they played Golden State, which was December, he was not leaving his feet when he was taking jump shots. He was shooting flat-footed. So that would indicate they didn't want him landing on that foot. But for him to dunk and come down and land on that foot, I guess, is a good sign. And he is indicating, was there some reports that he was playing a little 2-on-2, or is that murky?
Well, there was reports. A trainer that I guess he was allegedly working with, basically tweeted out or Instagrammed out a conversation with him. Now, I did ask the Sixers whether or not they could confirm that, and they declined to comment on that, which was more we don't really want to give updates on Embiid unless it's substantial than a denial to me.
Yeah.
But they have not officially confirmed that, no.
I have predicted, I think, because of the tie, if they were to sign one free agent, DeRozan would be the guy that I have said makes the most sense. Is there a free agent in this class you think they will target?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think they would probably target DeRozan, in large part because of Colangelo's history with him.
Sure.
Certainly, I'm not entirely on board with that. I just don't think he does enough outside of one-on-one isolation scoring to command the salary he is going to. But I do think he is a likely target. I would probably try to look at a couple of cheaper options, something like Kent Bazemore, something like an Alan Crabb, something more in that mold than going out for the biggest name on the market, just because I do think he is going to be overpaid, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the salary he's going to get.
All right, last one for Derek Bodner from Philly Mag. Does Brett Brown make it through the year?
I'm going to go with a very reserved yes.
All right.
But that is not a strong yes.
Very reserved, yes.
Yeah.
All right, Derek Bodner.
Certainly, I think there's a chance. There's a chance that if they're frustrated.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of intriguing options on the market all of a sudden. I wouldn't mind seeing Vogel in Philadelphia. I think he would be a great fit here. There's other great options out there. That's what makes it tough when you have somebody and then you start to see others. And, of course, the guy you have hasn't had a whole heck of a lot of success. It's different if you had Vogel and your team was the Pacers rather than letting him go. But there's a lot of interesting names on the market. All right, Derek Bodner, tomorrow night's the lottery, and we'll find out where the Sixers pick. You the man, Derek. Take care.
Yep, take care.